News Talk, 95.1 FM, 790 AM. This is KFYO Mornings with Dave King and Matt Martin here on your radio. And as we promised, Dr. Ben Powell is in the studio. And Dr. Ben, good morning.
Hey, good morning, Dave. Good morning, Matt.
Good morning.
Always glad to have you in here. We love talking politics. And Matt and I are political animals, and you know, that's right down your alley. You just wrote this book called Socialism Sucks, which is a huge bestseller. And how's it going?
It's been going great. Sales are still great on that. But to clarify, Dave, I don't actually like talking politics. I like talking economics and political economy.
Well, that's
which
true.
It has big political implications, but I'm not really into partisan politics stuff.
Yeah. Well, you're about to be next Thursday.
Well, yeah, a little bit reluctantly.
You got George Will coming to town.
Yes, so we're excited about this. So George Will is going to do our big keynote event this fall for the Free Market Institute. So that'll be next Thursday, October 10th at 5:30 in the Allen Theater. Like always, free and open to the general public. We hope Lubbock comes out to see it. And I know George is a little bit more controversial among some people, probably some of your listeners, than some of the other speakers we've had in the past.
He's probably persona non grata with the KFYO listener.
Yeah, I know he's been very critical of the Trump administration. Like I said, I'm actually not into partisan politics. I think George Will is interested for the bigger ideas rather than just what he's doing in current politics. So I've actually asked him to talk more about his latest book, which is called The Conservative Sensibility. And it's a big book. It's about 800 pages. I've read most of it, but not all of it. I haven't seen the word Trump in the book because it's about the bigger ideas that underlie conservatism than just what current politics is.
And what is his big idea? Because like I say, he's kind of a mystery to me. I've followed George Will back long ago. I find his columns sometimes are almost unreadable because I swear he makes up words. But still, he has been a staunch conservative, and I was surprised to see him go the other direction when Trump was elected.
Yeah, so, and by the way, I'm with you. I see words that I don't know in his books too. But what I would say the underlying premise of the conservative sensibility is he defines American version of conservatism in contrast to European as it wants to conserve the principles of the American Revolution, which to me, those are the principles of a country conceived in liberty. So really, it's a classical liberal project. And he contrast that with the battle against progressivism that he's firmly against in the United States. And he sees Woodrow Wilson personifying the movement in that direction and the creation of a professional administrative state rather than the Republican form of government under the Constitution that the founders gave us. So it's progressives versus founders is how he contrasts this. And I think when it comes to particular things going on with the presidency, it's more about the power of the presidency and the administrative state than the person in it. And he's objecting to the power structure as it exists under Trump the same way he was under Obama.
Well, he will be interesting to listen to. That's for certain. Again, that is going to be out at Tech. And did I mention Dr. Powell is the head of the Free Market Institute at Tech, also teaches at the Rawls College of Business. And so, of course, George Will.
And you know, Dave, we always we support free speech on campus for everybody, and we think groups with controversial speakers and speakers we disagree with, including those on the left, are great for people to come in and hear. And I think if George Will's challenging to Republicans and to conservatives in this area, it's good to hear arguments that you might disagree with and think about them, even if he doesn't change your mind, but to engage it. And that's the same thing I ask of our liberal students on campus when I bring in speakers that a lot of the listeners here like. I say, well, hear what they have to say and consider it.
Well, and here's what I'll say. I mean, I've been talking to you during the break, and I'll say I probably agree with his end goal, but I don't necessarily agree with his path to get there. You know, I mean, it's just one of those things.
Yeah.
I mean, his end goal is to take power away from and put it back into a structure of what the revolutionists had set up in the Constitution.
Yeah, they saw their job, right, as creating a government but then limiting its power so that it couldn't become abusive to the people, versus with progressivism, it's whatever the will of the people is, the state should be able to implement. and not see any limits on its power. And it's about getting that genie back in the bottle is the bigger project as I see what he's interested in.
I can't see a way to do that. But
Well, I think part of it, I'm an educator, so we're always biased in this direction.
Right.
But it's certainly not any guarantee of a move back in that direction. But part of the answer has to be talking about these ideas. And I think people in West Texas have a lot more sensibility than people in most places in this country.
I agree with that.
Why is that? Why do you think?
Dave, I'm not sure, but I do think there's something to it of, this was one of the last areas of the country to be settled and kind of closed. And so there's still a little bit more of an American individualist frontier type.
Well, the people that settled right here in the Llano Estacado were some pretty rugged people. Coming out here in a covered wagon and nothing but flat and grass, not a tree in sight, no water, and said, let's settle here.
Yeah.
You have to wonder, they were tougher than a boot, man.
Tougher and American individualists, but also people who have a sense of community and how to do things together as opposed to relying on a state or Washington or Austin to do it for you. And I don't know, maybe that we're only a few generations removed from some of that. Makes that easier to maintain here than on the coast.
No,
We also can't trust Austin to help us or Washington. I mean, we're out in the middle of nowhere, and there's been times where they haven't been willing to help us because we don't have enough of a population to do so.
Sure. Some of my supporters down in Abilene who help us with the Free Market Institute, one of them said one time, well, those of us out here who can help out and do things, if we have a fire, they're not going to send the fire truck from Dallas, so we got to do it for ourselves. That's a great West Texas attitude.
Yeah. Now, Ben, you're an East Coast boy, are you not?
Yeah, born and raised.
Yeah, and so this has been kind of a culture shock to move out here because it's quite different, is it not, than the way you were brought up?
Well, no, actually, the way I was brought up was actually more consistent with this, but I'm an outlier from up there. And I grew up, actually, before I even discovered economics, I was interested in classical liberalism, the American Revolution. I was going to Lexington and Concord and Bunker Hill and checking all of that out.
And I'll tell you, y'all have got some great historical sites up there.
You bet.
Great.
That's where it all happened, man.
Great historical sites for people who love liberty. And cool, I'll say the one disappointing thing about like the Alamo is visiting there and you see the knife and it's like, this is a Bowie knife. It's like the one Jimmy Bowie would have. I grew up with, like, you go see, this is Captain Parker's musket. It's the one he was holding in his hand on Lexington Green. And I'm like, oh, that's cool. A little different with some of those artifacts. But no, in many ways, coming here, I fit in much better. And certainly running a group like the Free Market Institute out here is way better than doing it back in Boston.
You don't have near the pushback, huh?
An illustration of this, when I first got here, Kent Hance was still chancellor. And,
right.
I let it be known that I could have Walter Williams come out here and speak. And Kent calls me and says, Ben, you can have Walter Williams out here to speak? I said, no, I can have Walter Williams speak. I need to get him out here. And Chancellor Hance said, oh, hell, you just need a plane? I'll get you one of those. and sure enough, we had him out here for our big opening, biggest first event in the fall. And I can't imagine if I was somewhere in Boston or on the West Coast and I said, oh, I can have Walter Williams speak here, having the Chancellor or the President say, oh, that's great, let me help you. Instead, there'd be a pox upon, oh, my God. And I think it's great that, inviting George Will in for next week for October 10th, that's what's controversial among some of our people in West Texas. Like, oh, I don't know about it. Now, it'd be controversial in Boston or California, too, but for very different reasons.
Yeah, exactly, for different reasons. Well, I want you to comment after this break about all this, about the socialism that we seem to be seeing rising in this country. So let's take a quick break, and we'll be back with Dr. Ben Powell, head of the Free Market Institute at Tech, and best-selling author of Socialism Sucks. Back in a moment. And we're back here with KFYO Mornings, Dave King and Matt Martin, and in the studio, Dr. Ben Powell, director of the Free Market Institute at Tech, and, of course, here to talk about bringing in the lecturer George Will this October the 10th at 5:30 p.m. at the Allen Theater. There we go.
Allen Theater in the Student Union Building, free and open to the public.
Where do you park?
It's Texas Tech, so it's always a mess. But you can park right there in what's called the band lot south of the student union. There's some pay to park there, and on the other side between administration too. Get there a few minutes early because it's always a pain in the neck doing that.
I was the band announcer for 10 years, and I parked on the band lot when we would go out of town on trips and come back, and I'd have a ticket on my car.
See, the problem
Jeez.
the problem with that the Allen Theater is it's almost in the center of campus, kind of. So you can't like park off campus and then scooter your way in too easily.
Yeah, I know. And we've dealt with this each year. We've done a big one in the Allen Theater. There's people walking in a little bit late because parking was messed up.
Yeah. Well, anyway, George Well, a high-profile guy. He'll be there at 5:30 to lecture. Will there? I guess there will be no opportunity to ask questions.
Yep,
or
there'll be
Q&A.
Yeah, sure. So if you're someone who's been critical of Will recently, show up, listen to his talk, and there'll probably be about 10, 15 minutes of Q&A right at the end of the lecture. There'll be a mic on either side of the walkway to come up and.
That might be interesting. That might be the most interesting part of the whole thing.
It quite often is.
Well, again, and as I said before we went to break, I am just mystified and baffled by what I am seeing and hearing from the particularly the youth of that age group, the college age group particularly, that seems to be so enamored with socialism. Now, you run the Free Market Institute. It's what the antithesis of socialism.
I'd like to think so.
But I think I mentioned this to you last time you were here, and you said that's not so prevalent at Texas Tech.
It's not so prevalent at Texas Tech as to other areas in the country. But I tell you, I spent the last. I'm on sabbatical this semester supposedly. I spent the last 2 weeks at Dartmouth, and I gave the socialism sucks talk up there, and it was a very receptive audience. The students were there, and that's a kind of liberal bastion. Now, admittedly, it was a bit of a bias of who came to the talk, as there's a group of decent economists up there who work with some students, more than good economists up there who work with some students. But I think part of it is, Dave, when you go around the country, there's a lot of these people who identify as socialists really aren't socialists. Socialism means something. It means
I don't think they know what it is.
Right. I think a lot of people don't know what it is, including sometimes people on the right who just want to point at everything and say, hey, that's socialism. Listen, socialism means government ownership or control over the major means of production, the major factors of production. And and it's also, by the way, not a 100% or 0% case. We can recognize when things are becoming more or less socialized in a place like the United States. But the government doesn't own the major means of the United States and the vast, vast, vast majority of industries here in the United States. Healthcare, it's not socialist as in government ownership, but I mean government control over what private parties can do is becoming more and more pervasive, and it's moving down that road. But a lot of
our education system is about as socialist as it gets.
Yeah, K through 12 education in the United States, that is government owned and controlled, and even the private ones basically face government regulations unless you're a homeschooler and stuff. And so that's one industry.
Well, where do you stand on education? Being a free market person,
I like education, I think we do a horrible job of it on the K through 12 level in the United States.
Well, I think the numbers say we do. We spend more than anybody on earth and have one of the lowest returns. Do we not?
I think we need competition in education, and when you have the state being the major provider of it across the country and prohibiting private parties from competing in many different ways, legislating that they basically have to compete in the same way that the government provides, I think that's bad for education.
So are vouchers the answer? I mean, it would open up competition, but it's government taxes.
Yeah, so vouchers are kind of complicated in this too, in that yes, in many cases it would be an improvement to get more competition for those government schools, but at the same time, if the vouchers come with the regulations that say how you have to teach, then it's going to ruin the innovative, creative process that you want to market to find the better ways of doing it, and that's kind of one of the big tensions in it. I think you could come up with ways to make education more affordable by unleashing competition, and in fact, actually, you see, private education. People in the United States always think of it as like this is expensive stuff, but go to poorer countries around the world that have free government schools that are horrible. All over the place, there's private education on very affordable for very poor people.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I always remember we sent a man to the moon with engineers, many of them taught in a one-room schoolhouse, and they use slide rule technology. I'm not sure we could repeat the event today. Okay, quick break, and then we'll come back and close things out with Dr. Ben Powell from the Free Market Institute at Texas Tech. And we are back here at 7:58 a.m. on Dave King and Matt Martin's radio show on KFYO Mornings. And with us live in the studio once again, Dr. Ben Powell, the head of the Free Market Institute out at Texas Tech, who's bringing George Will into town.
Yes, next Thursday, October 10th, 5:30 in the Allen Theater in the Student Union Building. You can hear from George Will. I know he's a bit controversial out here with KFYO listeners,
some.
probably, with some anyway. But I'd encourage you to come on out and hear him, because I've asked him not to talk just about current politics, but his new book, The Conservative Sensibility, I think a lot of people in West Texas will be largely sympathetic with that book. But then you'll also have a chance at the end in Q&A if you've seen some stuff you disagree with in his columns. Come on up and ask a question at the end of the lecture. The last 10, 15 minutes or so will be left for that.
Buy the book, come up and get it signed.
Yeah, we're not doing a book signing ahead
you're
of time
not?
on this one.
Okay.
They will be selling some copies of the book. The school bookstore will be out there selling some of those.
The Socialism Sucks?
No,
No, not mine this time.
Not yours.
But you can go online and get Socialism Sucks. Still available on Amazon.
Got to run. We're out of time. Thank you, Dr. Ben. We'll be back with more after this.